and indeed many other partners to be part of this initiative in the form of support and in a form of collaboration. I welcome this opportunity to participate here, this conference, which I believe should be able to enrich our understanding of the last 25 years. More particularly, what the impact of the last 25 years has been in changing the lives of our people. But one also hopes that this dialogue will also contribute to enable us to form a common vision with regard to the next 25 years. One welcomes this opportunity because a number of organizations are now engaged in examining what the past 25 years have meant to the people of South Africa. The ANC is finalizing a document entitled 25-Year Review of ANC Policy Implementation. At government level, we will soon be publishing a 25-year review, and the President's office, the President's Parliamentary Office, has just concluded a report entitled Respes Prospes, which is in Latin, which means examine the past, the present, and the future, which in many ways examines the extent to which Parliament has passed laws to implement the policies of the governing party and its manifestos. So what we are doing today will add to the wealth of knowledge about the past 25 years, and in some ways, a number of other institutions are going to be doing the same. And so this review process of the last 25 years will soon become a national sport, and let us all participate in this sport today. Now, the issue of determining the impact of what we would call the national democratic revolution over the past 25 years is in some ways reminiscent of the moment when Henry Kissinger in 1972 met the Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai, and it is said that he asked him what he, Zhou Enlai, thought or believed was the impact of the French Revolution. It is said that Zhou Enlai took a deep breath and after a pregnant silence said, "It is too early to tell." Given that the French Revolution of 1789 had occurred nearly 200 years before, Zhou Enlai was expressing the long view of history in a very witty and Oscar Wildean way. News of this quote by Zhou Enlai immediately flew around the chattering classes in the West, and it soon became used as evidence that the Chinese, especially the Chinese intellectuals and leaders, took a long view of things, that they were a patient civilization, and that when they thought about the future, they always thought about the future in hundreds of years, and not in just a few years. Could we say that examining what our nation has been through in the past 25 years could be termed as being too early to tell? Is patience one of our key attributes as a nation? One would ask. Are we able to look back and say what we've been through needs to be looked at much more analytically in the next 25 years or in the next 100 years? But this engagement is essential if we are to arrive at an understanding of what the 25 years the past has been and what it has meant, so that we can forge what I would call a durable and a lasting understanding across society of what these 25 years have meant and how we need to craft a vision for a future for the next 25 years. But this conference fulfills a dual purpose. Firstly, it is an opportunity for us to assess progress towards the achievement of our overall and overarching vision. A vision of our national democratic revolution, which is a vision to have a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, prosperous, and free society. Secondly, it is a platform to identify the challenges, the opportunities and tasks of the present, as well as the future. And in reflecting on these issues, it would be important to consider the priorities, the tasks, as well as the recommendations contained in some of our national plans. And we've had quite a number of national plans, such as the Reconstruction and Development Program, and others, but more especially our current plan, the National Development Plan. Based on an extensive diagnostic report which provided what many people regarded as a very frank assessment of the state of our nation, the National Development Plan sets out a clear vision to 2030. It is our hope that this conference would also give attention to the program that we have set out for the term of the 6th Democratic Administration. Through the State of the Nation address and departmental budget votes that have just concluded, we have described the measures that will define our developmental pathway for the next 5 years and beyond. Research and academic institutions have a critical role to play in advising government, in providing the necessary data, and in terms also of informing our planning models. As I said in the State of the Nation address a few weeks ago, this is a government that is not afraid of new ideas. And in fact, it is a government that is welcoming to new ideas. And we are also welcoming to new ways of thinking. And our engagement with intellectuals and academic people is a clear proof of that. We want as many ideas as possible to be put on the table. We do want to work with key role players, and especially intellectuals, to bring added rigor to the work of government. We look to you to continue to be a voice of both sensibility and conscience, but also of criticism in our national life. In his famous Wraith Lecture series on the representations of the intellectual, Edward Said posited the role of the public intellectual against what he termed the insiders. It is these insiders, he said, who mold public opinion, make it conformist, and encourage reliance on a superior little band of all-knowing men in power. The public intellectual, by contrast, does not promote special interests, but is at the forefront of questioning patriotic nationalism, corporate thinking, and a sense of class, racial, and gender privilege. The role of the public intellectual goes beyond speaking truth to power, important as that may be. It is about providing social analysis that challenges the status quo, that interrogates the influence of vested interests in public life, and that is concerned with the production and dissemination of knowledge that is interventionist by nature. Today, we ask that such critical analysis be directed at our experience of the 25 years of nation building. There is very little contestation throughout the country on the assertion that South Africa is a vastly different place to what it was in 1994. As a 2018 report published by the South African Institute of Race Relations notes, we are sometimes too modest about our achievements. A report titled Life in South Africa, Reasons for Hope, which report was drafted and led by Kelebogile Leapile. I saw that she's on the program later on during this conference. This report highlights the remarkable progress we have made in providing a number of basic services to the people of our country, also in providing assets to the poor, in reviving and transforming our economy, in opening the doors of education and learning, in advancing non-racialism and non-sexism, and in cementing a democratic constitutional order. The road that we have traversed to get to Kelebogile Leapile's Reasons for Hope report was not an easy road, as we had to contend with having to deal with the legacy of colonialism and apartheid, and this legacy continues to this day. And I use the word road advisedly, the road that we have traveled advisedly. I always try and have a dig and try to take the mickey out of my comrades in the South African Communist Party in the way that they have always crafted some slogans during the various stages of our struggle. In the 60s, they spoke about the road to South African freedom. The imagery suggested that it was a broad road where all the masses of our people were traversing and traveling together. And then in the 80s, they came up with another slogan they titled The Path to Power. And then one feared that they would come up with another slogan, which they never did, that they would say footpath to democracy. So that imagery, I always say to them, you start off with the road, which meant broad, and then path, which meant smaller, and footpath would also be a scary one. But I'm glad they never got to the footpath imagery. Now, in many ways, that imagery also describes the challenges we face along this road, where we had to deal with a number of issues that were difficult. They almost were difficulties that you often get when you travel or traverse a footpath in the villages with rocks and ditches and all that. And some of these, in the early years of our democracy, we were called upon to address an immediate economic crisis just as we got into power, which was characterized by a substantial fiscal deficit, a huge apartheid debt bill, and stagnant growth. These challenges were underpinned by an economy that was, in its design and structure, simply unable to satisfy the needs of the people of South Africa. Through sound macroeconomic management and, to some extent, the benefits of a democratic dividend, we succeeded in turning around public finances and setting the country on an improved growth path. I always say that when we got into power, and many people are immediately not alive to this, when we got into power in 1994, the economy of this country was broken. It was a total disaster, and we had been the pariah of the world, and investment inflow from the international community was at its lowest ebb. So our economy was really in a really tight situation. We should, however, say that much as we succeeded in turning public finances around and putting the country on an improved growth path, we, however, did not pay attention to addressing the structure of our economy to ensure that all people of our country attain economic emancipation after attaining democratic emancipation. Over the course of the last 25 years, we have thus been less successful in addressing the structural faults in our economy. In the end, and despite significant economic progress in the years leading up to the global financial crisis, unemployment has increased over the last decade, poverty levels have begun to rise again, and millions of South Africans remain excluded through lack of assets, skills, and networks.